Thanks to everybody that has joined this call today. We see at least 26 attendees. Thank you for including your name and your organization. We're really excited to share with you this funding opportunity to increase skills-based volunteers at your organization this year. So just quickly, my name is Kat Keene. I serve as the National Service Programs Director here at Volunteer Florida. I wanted to share with you, for those of you that may be new to Volunteer Florida, we are the governor's lead agency for volunteerism and national service in Florida, administering more than $31.7 million in federal, state, and local funding to deliver high-impact national service and volunteer programs in Florida. We also promote and encourage volunteerism to meet a number of critical needs across the state and serve as Florida's lead for coordinating volunteers and donations during, before, and after disaster. So that's a little bit about who we are. To talk about the Volunteer Generation Fund funding opportunity, I'd like to introduce Audrey Kidwell, the Volunteer Generation Fund Program Manager.
Hello, everybody. So Volunteer Florida administers the Volunteer Generation Fund, which is an initiative of the Corporation for National and Community Service. It focuses on investment on volunteer management practices that increase volunteer recruitment and retention. The VGF will help to increase the capacity of your organization to recruit, manage, support, and retain skills-based volunteers to serve in high-value volunteer assignments. The grant period is a 10-month period beginning December 1st and ending September 30th, 2016. And then Volunteer Florida will make available 20 subgrantees serving the needs of Floridians, each receiving $10,625 in grant funding and training support for their participation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what is skills-based volunteering, just in case anyone had any questions. And so skills-based volunteering is a strategic type of volunteerism that expands the impact of nonprofits by incorporating a range of skills that strengthen the operations and service of nonprofits. By leveraging all types of knowledge and expertise, skills-based volunteers help to build and sustain nonprofits' capacity and help them achieve their mission successfully and can serve to enhance and enrich the lives of volunteers.
The priorities for funding and the eligibility. We were really excited that over 80 of you have started the application process on the online portal. So eligibility, this is the same eligibility you'll see for any Corporation for National and Community Service funding stream. That you are a public or private nonprofit. It includes faith-based, other community organizations, institutions of higher education, government entities, tribes, labor organizations, and consortia. So the eligibility is pretty broad. We are going to be encouraging geographic diversity, so we're actively seeking proposals from the 7 regions of the state as identified by our Division of Emergency Management. So you'll see that part in the application is selecting what geographic region that you represent. But basically that eligibility is pretty broad. One thing to note, that this source of funding, the Volunteer Generation Fund, it cannot be used to kind of commingle or expand other national service programs like AmeriCorps, AmeriCorps Vista, Senior Corps, RSVP, foster grandparents. If your organization has these programs, that's fine, you can apply, but this funding cannot be commingled with that other national service funding stream, nor can the budgets, obviously, or the outcomes. So just want to note that those are separate funding sources.
Also, successful applicants will effectively engage and track skills-based volunteers and increase organizational volunteer management practices. On page 2 of the RFP, there is a list of the 8 volunteer management practices, and those will also again be highlighted in the application portion. Here are the 6 CNCS focus areas, and we also will be choosing applicants that can help us diversify these 6 areas. On the CNCS website and in the RFP, there is a link that you can follow that will give you more detail on the definition of each of these 6 focus areas. We will also be taking in consideration some special considerations, and the first one is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And so these organizations engage skills-based volunteers in STEM educational programs or activities. And then we will also be looking for organizations that engage in the My Brother's Keeper initiative. And again, in the RFP, there are the 5 outcomes and kind of goals for the My Brother's Keeper initiative.
Okay, so your performance measures, your targets, this is what the funding is designed to do as far as what your impact will be. There is a target number of volunteers to be recruited, so that's 200, and the target number of community volunteers, the hours served, that's 1,900. For some organizations, we've had conversations with you previously where this sounds like a large number. And I want you to know that I don't know that we've ever in our 6 years had a grantee that did not meet their number of volunteers and their hours. Once you get into the grant, you'll see that skills-based volunteering is a very broad definition, and your volunteers can, mostly your volunteers will be able to count towards this. So when you enter the application, this is what you'll be opting into, that you will be recruiting 200 skills-based volunteers and the associated 1,900 hours. You'll also complete, if awarded, a pre and a post test, because we want to look at what, as a result of this funding, did your organization increase its volunteer management practices? So if funded, you'll do a pre-test in the beginning of the contract period and a post-test at the end. And I don't know if we're talking about this elsewhere, Audrey, but I want to also share with you there's some amazing training that you'll have the opportunity to participate in. It's a multi-day volunteer generation fund training scheduled for January. So we're also investing in you as grantees to provide that skills-based training.
Okay, and so we're going to turn it over to our finance people so they can go over the budget portion.
Okay, good morning. This is Bonnie Hazelton. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Volunteer Florida, and I wanted to touch base with you on the amount for the grants and what they can be used for, and then Debbie Lupton can also assist with questions when we get to the end. The amount is $10,625 and can be allocated to the following budget categories. Personnel expenses, and these are funds that may be used to hire new or support existing personnel to develop or augment a skills-based volunteer program. So that's the capacity building portion right there. You may also include the cost of background checks for personnel charged to this grant. So we know that you will have individuals that will be charged to this grant, and you can use this category for your background checks as well. You can use the funds for transportation expenses, and these are funds for transportation expenses which are directly related to, and that's an important point, the recruitment, support, management, and retention of skills-based volunteers. So it does, you are allowed to use it for transportation, but it needs to be directly related to those activities. They can be used for things such as airfare, car rental, mileage, tolls, meals, and these are in accordance with the state of Florida guidelines. We follow those guidelines. They're very well established, and many of you may be familiar with those. So we follow those. Another category that you can use the funds for is technology and equipment. Again, these funds may be used for technology and equipment or software. Again, the point is that they're directly related to the recruitment, support, management, and retention of these skills-based volunteers. It can also be used for tracking volunteer demographics and activities. So again, that's designed to help in your capacity building and your ability to count and evaluate the effectiveness of the program. Grantees are required to provide 100% in-kind and or cash match for the $10,625. So you can use all cash, you can use all in kind, or you can use some combination thereof.
And then also, we want to just point out, successful grantees will report to Volunteer Florida on the Volunteer Generation Fund performance measures, including the number of volunteers engaged, hours served, volunteer demographics, and the increase of the organizational effectiveness of their volunteer management practices. And so we currently have it set up tentatively, I guess, to be twice a year. There'll be a mid-year reporting. We will send out information on the types of demographics that you will need to collect, and then there'll be an end-of-year reporting, which will ask the same set of questions.
Thanks, Audrey. And just 2 comments. This is Kat again. Related to the budget, the cash or in-kind match, please know that you should project that realistically and accurately, and it will need to be documented throughout your contract year. So when you're putting in that cash or in-kind match and the source of funds, know that documentation would be collected for that match, just as the federal grant. So please know that. We have sometimes organizations put in a lot of match, but don't realize that will have to be documented throughout the year. So please be aware of that. And then the second thing to add regarding reporting, I think you'll find it pretty not a heavy lift on the reporting, because you're, again, just doing it mid-year and end of year. But what I want you to be aware of is that we'll request demographics of your volunteers, but we will not ask you to collect information that you're not already collecting. So, for example, one of the categories is veterans that volunteer, or college-age students that volunteer. If you're not already collecting that demographic information, we wouldn't ask you to build something new. But we are going to request that you share with us the demographics of what you have. And I also want to just mention about the background check. That is on page 5 of the application. All Corporation for National Community Service grantees or funding streams require a 3-part background check that's consistent with those standards. So please be aware that any personnel that's charged on the federal or the match side of the grant would need to complete a 3-part background check that includes the National Sex Offender Predator Registry, State of Florida clearance, and FBI fingerprint check.
Okay. And then we're going to go over just the timeline, and again, that is on page 5 of the RFP. And so today, September 24th, we're having this technical assistance call. This call that has been recorded will be posted on our website after this. And then the next step is applications are due to Volunteer Florida October 16th by 5 p.m. And that, again, will be submitted through our online grants management system. In a few minutes, we're going to show you what that looks like live. After that, we will be doing an internal programmatic and budget review of all of the applications. Clarification will be sent out November 13 to grantees, and then the final application and budget revisions will be due back to Volunteer Florida by November 20th, and then we will be issuing contracts to the successful applicants on December 1st. After December 1st, we'll have a contract call for the grantees to kind of go over the details of the contract. Applicants that aren't receiving funding will be notified by December 11th, and then for all of the successful applications, there will be a sub-grantee training, and it's tentatively scheduled for January of 2016. Okay, and now we're going to open it for questions. Currently, I have you guys all muted on our end, so if you guys could make sure to mute your side, so when I unmute you, there's not a lot of static and feedback on the call. So if you have any questions about the RFP or anything that we've gone over so far, please ask that now.
Hi, Audrey. We have the Chapman Partnership.
Hello.
I have a question for you with regards to background check. If you are currently funded by Volunteer Florida and you're renewing, will the people that were background checked this year have to be background checked for the 2016 application?
Hi, that's a great question. This is Kat. If there is not a gap in service of more than 120 days is the federal kind of standard, there is not the need to recheck the 3-part background check. We do request that the NSOPW clearance be rerun again for all grantees, and that's a very quick internet search. But if the employees are the same and there hasn't been a gap, then there's no need to rerun the state and the federal.
Wonderful, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, hi, my name is Martha Barrett. I'm with the City of Miami. And
Oh, sorry.
hello?
Sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yes, my name is Martha Barrett. I'm with the City of Miami,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a couple of questions.
Okay, great.
I wanted to know if the volunteers had to serve on a year-round basis.
No, Maria, the volunteers can be both ongoing and episodic.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so my second question is, can they serve only one program?
No, that is not a limitation in the grant. Many of our skills-based volunteers in communities may be volunteering and serving with any number of organizations.
Okay, I'm a little unclear. We have one program that we might want the volunteers to serve on, and I wanted to know if that was okay, only one program.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you'll see in the application that what you'll clarify is what is the focus area for those volunteers. For example, is it education, like mentoring students, or is it environmental stewardship, like working in the park system? You'll see an option to designate what kind of services those volunteers will be doing.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Sure. Other questions?
Hi, my name is Elaine Unterberger from the Florida Institute of Studies in Tampa, and my question is also about the background. Who is your provider? Is there a specific provider, or do you accept the Florida or the school system?
Yeah, great question. Volunteer Florida doesn't require a particular provider, if you will. We do require that the FBI and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, as the state check, be completed. Some organizations do partner with their school districts to do that check. Some organizations have partnered with Department of Children and Families or other partners. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
And I think I saw a question in the chat box about how does this relate to the larger AmeriCorps grant. That's a great question. The Volunteer Generation Fund is a separate fund from the Corporation for National and Community Service. So the way they're connected is same federal funding source. But other than, and also because it's the same federal source, some of the same federal rules and guidelines. But it is not AmeriCorps, and members are not national service members. The goal of the fund is to support skills-based volunteerism across the country and to support the capacity of nonprofits and other organizations. I see another question in the chat box about if the funds can be paid to volunteers as stipends, etc. No, that would not be the way to use this funding source. These funds can be used to support staffing, technology, or in some cases transportation. So those are the allowable budget categories. Another question in the chat box. So all of our volunteers have to have a background check. No, that is not correct. Your volunteers would need to have the background check that is associated with your organization in your policies and procedures. Our requirement is that if you are charging staff time and personnel time in the federal or match side, those individuals need to have the 3-part background check. Great question. Another question about 501c3 status is pending. Can you apply? That is a good question. I am not sure on the answer for that. One of the eligibility criteria of the online application is putting in your tax ID number. You won't be able to move farther without that. So for you that has asked this pending status question, I don't know that this may not be the right timing for this grant funding, but I'd encourage you to call me, Kat, at Volunteer Florida, or Audrey offline, and we're happy to talk with you about your particular situation. Another question about background check being completed through Florida Department of Corrections and Juvenile Justice. Yes, likely that would be approved. Oh, we have somebody that wants to know, where is the training going to occur? We always want to know that. Where is that VGF training going to occur? You know, likely it will be in Central Florida, as that seems to be a central location for most of our partners. There's a question about performance measures related to 150 and target hours of 1,200. You know, those were the performance measures for this past year. So for this upcoming year, they are slightly increased, and they'll be the ones that were associated with the slides. I see another question about the CFDA number, the source of funding. Off the top of my head, I don't recall that CFDA number, but it is the Corporation for National Community Service, and there is a CFDA number. We can get back with you on that. Volunteers do not have to be new recruits. Oh, and we have another chat comment with some clarification on the FEIN number. Thank you for that information. Another question about match. Can we use current volunteer hours? Debbie, do you want to take that question?
You can use your volunteer hours. However, you have to be able to document those, and it would be based on whether or not it is a specific type, such as an attorney, and what type of volunteer he's doing. So if it's an attorney and he is helping plant flowers, you cannot include the rate that he would be paid as an attorney. So there are some guidelines to that, but yes, you could do that.
It's a little tricky, though. I'll
It's
just
very
add.
tricky.
And we would not recommend that you do that, because then that volunteer is going to have to go through a 3-part background check, and you're going to have to keep time records and payment records and hour records on that person to submit for documentation. So we would not suggest that route. Yes, board members can count as volunteers. And then another question about, can the money be used to increase the capacity of another national service program, the VISTA or NCCC? It cannot. Now, skills-based volunteering can be pretty broad, and you may very well have an NCCC team or a VISTA team that is doing some work in your community. You can still have these funds. They just can't be commingled, and everything needs to be tracked separately. Great questions, Florida. You had some really good questions in this chat box. I think given time, we probably should move on to the MicroEdge application. So if you have any additional Q&A questions, please email them to vgfapplication@volunteerflorida.org, and we're happy to answer them. We're really excited to support you.
Okay, so we are going to move on to the actual online application. And so on pages 6 and 7 of the RFP, there is the application scoring criteria. And again, this should help guide some of the written pieces of your application. And so I briefly just wanted to kind of go over what the online application looks like. And so, again, there are application instructions on the last part of the RFP, and then there are actual screenshots of what the questions look like, so you can be as informed as you can before you go in to actually submit the application.
Can I add one thing,
Yeah.
Audrey? I want you to know, those of you on the call, this is a simple, straightforward, streamlined application where responses should not be more than 500 words. So I think you'll be pleased to see that, yes, indeed, you can complete this application very easily by October 16th. It is very different from a standard AmeriCorps application.
Yes. So the one thing that is a good user error is that our grants management system is not user-friendly with Google. So please try to use Internet Explorer or Mozilla Foxfire. And then in the RFP, and here on the screen, is the link to the application. And so I'm actually going to back out really quick so I can... Okay. So if you follow the link, it's going to take you to this page. And this is the Volunteer Florida Grants Management homepage. So if you are a new applicant or new to MicroEdge is what the organization is called, which most of you will be, it is going to prompt you to create a username and password. So what you would do is you would hit New Applicant, and it's going to open and it's going to ask you to put in your email twice and create a password. And again, it needs to be 5 characters with both letters and numbers. You'll press continue, and then it'll open up into the application. Since I already have created a password, I'm not going to create a new applicant. And one thing to note is that we have no control over your username or password, so if you forget it, there is a way to prompt them to send you a new email, but I have no record of that. So you log in. And it's gonna, first thing it's gonna do is ask you for your tax ID number. So you will enter it, and you'll press OK. Or not.
There's a dash in one of those, yeah.
There we go. Okay, you need the dash. Sometimes I feel like it works without the dash, sometimes I feel like it does. But if you know that your FEIN number is correct and you put it with the dash and without the dash, you can please contact me or the VGF application at volunteerflorida.com so we can kind of help with that user error. And the first 3 things that we're going to ask you to do is to fill out this eligibility quiz. You know, it's a very simple, straightforward quiz. Are you a Florida-based organization? Are you based here, and is the volunteer work done in Florida? And you want to press yes. Is your organization one of the following? And again, that is in the eligibility criteria. Are you a public or private nonprofit? Are you faith-based, government entity, institute of higher ed, etc.? And you'll want to press yes. And then, do you use volunteers to meet the mission of your organization? Press yes. And then you'll press submit. So then this will take you to the actual application. And again, like we've tried to streamline it as much as possible and to put as many like help boxes in there for you so you can be aware of like what is needed to be submitted. But at any time you're confused, you can definitely reach out and let me know. This hyperlink right here, if you click it, it will actually open to the RFP again, just in case you know you don't have the form in front of you, you can download it right there on the spot. You will want to make sure to put in everything that has this red little asterisk is something that is required, and so you will need to make sure that you fill that out. So you'll put your organization name in, your tax ID, what type of status you are, and we've tried to incorporate all of them, but for some reason, if you feel like yours is not one of them, again, you can please let me know and we can change that. You will need to put your Florida region, and if you open up the hyperlink, you can see this little PDF right here will tell you actually by county what region you're in, okay? You'll put your address, your city, your state, your postal code, the phone number for the office, and the website for your office. For the applicant information, we do want your name, your specific email, your title, and your direct line. You'll fill all of this out. You'll press next. And then this is where we're going to kind of start getting into the project demographics. So you want to put the project title. A lot of, for past grantees, it's been an actual name of a project that they have going on. You want to put all of the cities served and all of the counties served so we can make sure that we get a nice broad representation of where the volunteers will be working at. You'll select your focus area. Again, here's a hyperlink, and it will actually open you up to the CNCS page, and it will have a definition of each of these focus areas. You can only select one. We don't want you to select all, and we understand that some fit in with others, and a lot of times they can kind of be similar. So you really need to make sure that you find the focus of your project. And so it will only allow you to select one. So just letting you know. If you have a special consideration, you will check these boxes. You can check both, or you can leave them blank. It's up to the project that you're proposing. And then we have your volunteer management practices. There are the 8 here. You must select 3, but you can select all of them, or you can select just 3, or any combination of those. Okay, so this is the executive narrative. It talks about the proposal and the organizational capacity of your organization. I suggest you write this up in a Word document and then you copy and paste it into the prompts. That way you can just make sure that this isn't going to time out on you, and that your information is saved in a secure place. We have put in that it is a 500 word count, and as you type, it will make sure to take that down for you so you'll know where you're at. And then I have some help boxes that can help you find where the information is referred to. Sorry, it's not popping up, but it's there. So then you have your organizational capacity. Again, the same thing, it's 500 words. There are prompts in the RFP, and again, just copy and paste that in. You'll press next. And so then we have performance measures. So what you need to do is you just need to opt into all 3 of these. You cannot change them, and you cannot select 1 out of 3. You must have all 3. So we simply just want you to check, verifying that you completely understand that you are required to do 200 volunteers and 1,900 hours. And then you're going to describe how the performance measures will be met. And so that, again, the prompts are in the RFP. Okay, and here's the budget. So the budget is definitely something that if you're confused on, please let me know. But again, there are 4 areas that you can submit for funding for reimbursement from Volunteer Florida, and then the same 4 areas that you can provide match for. And so as you can kind of see, I have them boxed off so you know which ones go together. So for section 1 is personnel. And again, it's if applicable, because maybe everyone's going to put all of their funding in personnel. Maybe other people are going to divide it up again amongst the 4 different categories. It really just depends on the preference of your organization. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the total in here. And so let's say you're going to put $10,000 in for the personnel total. The personnel budget justification is we really want the math on how you came up with that number. And so again, this could be one, volunteer coordinator, times their annual salary of $20,000 times 0.5, because they're going to spend 50% of their time working on this grant, right? And so then that would give you the $10,000. If it's, your executive director, if it is your finance person, it's whatever. We don't necessarily need names of that person. We just need the person's role. We just want to know how you came up with that money. Again, you can put, if you have match, you can put match there. If you have nothing, you can leave it blank. It's very straightforward. And so then again, you can keep putting down the different areas. So then we have the second category, which is fringe benefits. You'll put in the total for either what you want reimbursed or for what match you're providing, and you'll put the justification for that. We have transportation, and then we have also technology. And so one thing that I do want to make note of is that the more information you can put in the justification, the easier it is for us, because sometimes we want to make sure that we understand how you got that total. And so one thing for technology is, like, if you're using a database, make sure to put the name of the database in there, so we can just make sure that it's something that you're asking for, and then later on down the future we can make sure to match that with your budget. And so one thing that you'll need to make sure of is that when you are done putting in all of your information, you'll need to press the calculator. There's no other way around it, but you'll press the calculator. And it'll refresh the page because the system's designed to do that. and it will tell you how much that you've put in. So for the total amount that I've requested reimbursement is $10,000. I have a little reminder that you can't ask for more than $10,625. Total match, I put in 0, so it says 0, and then it auto calculates both of them, so you can kind of know what your overall grant package is going to be. And then we have your budget narrative. Again, in the RFP, there are some bullet points for you to kind of go over and to articulate that. But again, we don't need the math justification because you've put that somewhere else. And then the last thing is the submission. We just need you to check these 2 boxes. One, you check that you understand that all of your VGF people that you are charging to the time will need to be background checked. And so that's just for us to make sure that you're aware of it again. And then you also will check this box saying that everything that you have submitted in this application is true. You'll put in your name, you can just type it in, and then you will select the date that you're submitting it. And then the last thing that you'll need to do before it's officially submitted is you will need to press review and submit. So then MicroEdge will bring together your entire application. If anything was not filled out, you will get this red error message and it will tell you exactly where it needs to be corrected. And then it will also highlight the red areas that says I didn't fill this in. Again, you can fill it in right here. You don't need to go back into the section that it corresponded with. If you see something and you're like, oh man, there was a spelling error, you can change it right here. And again, you'll keep going all the way down until you fix it. You'll press update. You can press update, and then it will take, once everything is submitted, you'll press update, and then it will say, are you sure you want to submit this? And you'll press review and submit. I can't do it because I didn't fill out the application. So let's say, for example, you're not ready, you keep getting an error message. You can press save and finish later. And it will actually take you to your kind of landing page for Volunteer Florida, and it will actually be saved right here. So you can open it again, and you can go back in and edit what you need to do and submit it when you're ready. So 2 ways to know that your application has been submitted is, 1, when you press submit here, they'll have a red error message that says, thank you for submitting your application. But you will also get an email from Volunteer Florida, but the address is mail@grantapplication.com. And that is just, again, it's an automated email system that is sent to you. And it will say, thank you so much for your submission, and it will have all of the information that you put in your application, so you can have a copy of it too. If you save it, you'll get the similar message, but see, it says your application has been saved successfully. And then it also gives you a tracking number, and you can go back in and edit that at any time.
Audrey, thank you. I saw one question in the chat box about organizational capacity, and I want to bring your attention to page 6 of the application scoring criteria. That is the section that associates the points with each section of your application and the scoring criteria. So at that time, you can see what points are associated with what sections and what prompts should be responded to in each section, including the organizational capacity.
And then we had another question come in on the chat box about the My Brother's Keeper, and are you required to follow all 5 key points? And the answer is no. You really you need to follow at least one of them, but you do not need to follow all 5. Let's see if there are any other questions. No, you cannot select multiple regions. You would put the region that your office is in, and for some reason, if you are in South Florida and you're working in 3 counties, you would just need to make sure to highlight that in the application. But for the purposes of the regions, you can only select one. All right, are there any final questions about the Volunteer Generation Fund?
Aren't they muted?
Yeah. You want me to unmute them? Or do we?
Right, because if they're going to ask questions, they should be unmuted. Okay. Okay, we're in the process of unmuting your lines to see if there's any final questions. And I see one final question in the chat box about volunteers do not need to be newly recruited. That is correct. They do not need to be newly recruited for the period. Other questions on the phone line?
Yeah, this is Sandy with County Emergency
Within the Tallahassee region, it's 52 miles from Tallahassee. Would we be able to apply for a grant?
Absolutely. If you are located in Tallahassee, you are eligible to apply if you meet the other eligibility criteria, yes.
Okay, we're not located in Tallahassee. We're like 56 miles from Tallahassee.
Yes. As far as the geography, any Florida-based organization can apply if they meet that eligibility criteria.
Okay.
Other questions?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Sandy with Lee County Emergency Management. And I just wanted to verify that I am the volunteer coordinator here. Would my salary or a portion of it be considered matching for this, or does it need to be something different than that?
No, that could be considered match, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Other questions? I see one in the chat box about scoring criteria for performance measures. To get a sense of what that is, just please see that scoring criteria on page 6 and 7 in the application, and that will share with you the what is the scoring criteria for performance measures. Okay, any final questions? I would not mention that, just because.
Performance measures on page 7 are different from the ones on page 4.
Yes, thank you.
Page 4, it says the target is with 1,900 hours, and on page it says 160 with 1,200.
Thank you. Yes, we do have to make an edit, so it is the larger of the numbers, 200 and 1,900 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see a question under organizational type. What would be for county government? That would be your municipality. Okay, so if you have any other questions, you can please contact us via that website and that email address that goes directly to Audrey or myself, Kat, at volunteerflorida.org. We know you probably have some more questions about your particular scenario and proposal, so please just give us a call or send us those questions in email, and we can help manage that and answer your questions. We're really excited to fund not 15 but 20 grantees this year, and we look forward to supporting you throughout that process. This webinar is recorded and it will be posted in the near future. Audrey, do you have any closing comments?
No, I look forward to reading all of your guys' applications.
All right, thanks everyone.